It's no longer news that there's a housing deficit in Nigeria, about 17 million going by the federal government and the World Bank's last count. Well, the solution, or at least the first step of solving this problem is, according to the Minister of Housing, who is also heading the power and work sectors, Babatunde Fashola, is that the government intends to spend 10 billion naira annually on low-income housing estates. That said, well, let's look at the reality of the issue of housing in Nigeria. On this episode of Big Story, I'm Minnie Thompson. The need and availability of good quality houses define the landscape of various states in Nigeria. In some parts, there's a picture of comfort and affluence. These areas could be called wealthy. And in other areas, the looks are not so comfortable, but albeit available, because there are cases of lack of it. Adetoye Adesanya, a resident of Lagos State, is one of those who has suffered the consequences of insufficient housing. He says he and about 100 of others paid for some apartments in 2008. They were later to discover that the same apartment had been paid for by many others.
People started fighting, killing themselves and stuff like that. OPC intervened to the issue. So some of us were driven out and we couldn't get our apartment according to what we paid for. So we took the thing to allow us to people's rights, human rights, before somebody now went to EFCC to report the matter. And since 2008 to 2009, the case has been with EFCC. We've gone through court processing at High Court in Ikeja.
These are the cases that were topmost on the mind of the minister in charge of housing, Babatunde Fashola, when he promised that he plans to construct 40 blocks of 12 flats per block in each state of the country. He, however, asked that states have to make available 10 hectares of land for the project. But obviously, this alone will not eradicate the issue of insufficient housing, and so the governors have taken up projects of their own, all based on calculations of their needs and customized strategies.
According to 2006 census figures, Kwara State, with a population of about 3.5 million, has 486,000 households, with an estimated 6 people per household. Therefore, Kwara State has a deficit of about 584,000 affordable housing units. This deficit not only demonstrates how serious the housing situation is, it also underlines the need for partnership with the private sector, as government alone cannot fill the housing gap on its own.
Taking it beyond the plans, governors such as that of Kaduna State participate personally in the projects.
See, our goal over the next 4 years is to build at least 20,000 housing units in our urban areas to reduce the pressure and housing deficit in our state.
The challenge has also forced some states to look inwards with the intention to harness overlooked resources such as land.
If we embark vigorously on utilization of the lands that we have and properly title them, survey them, plan them in line with the master plan already done by the state through NIGES, we shall be able to access tremendous amount of revenue. But not until some other aspect of jobs are done. That is why we have taken this aerial survey of all the areas that are available for this purpose.
The good old approach of mortgage is what Lagos State has chosen to embrace to deal with its over 2.2 million deficit handled by the Mortgage Board.
Lagos Mortgage Board is a board that oversees the pre-qualification and qualification of applicants. But with the present deficit that exists in Lagos in terms of housing, we we are told from the report that we will need to go into active construction of houses. We will need 185,500 units yearly in the next 5 years to bridge the gap.
While the approach of other governments has been to attract investment into the housing sector, such as the Western Housing Project in Anambra State.
Those investments is going to do high-rise buildings there, containing 250 flats per high-rise. We try to encourage people to come and set up 20, 30 story buildings here.
Government have not been idle on the issue.
We are clear that we must develop something new and something different that is useful for reducing the deficit in housing. In this way, we hope to diversify first our economy. We hope to grow our SMEs and local capacity. We hope to evolve something that is sustainable in the sense that the majority of Nigerians can benefit from it by getting themselves onto the housing ladder.
Planning to bridge the housing gap is one thing. Funding of the plan is another. The Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, backed by the National Housing Fund Act, was formulated for this. However, the managing director of FMBN, Mr. Gimba Kumo, said that the carrying out of this function has been difficult because financial institutions have, for about 24 years now, not contributed to the bank. But hopefully, this would change as the President, Muhammadu Buhari, has called for a refocus on mortgage.
Mortgage institutions achieving affordable housing for all Nigerians will require the development of strong and enduring mortgage institutions with transparent processes and procedures. Mortgage refinancing company, this institution, when fully operational, should ensure adequate support for mortgage financing.
Even industry players agree that there's yet a lot to be done.
This is work in progress. The important thing is that the sector is changing. The sector is providing more access to housing finance, both in the area of construction finance and mortgages. And we might not be where we intend to be, but we're making progress. Previously, you hardly can walk into any organization, any mortgage institution, primary mortgage institution, as it were, as they were known then, to get a 5-year mortgage, to get a 10-year mortgage. Most of those institutions were really not properly capitalized to be able to provide long-term funding, which is the basic driver for mortgage provision. So, but now you can walk into a mortgage bank and arrange to get a home on mortgage, not on a cash and carry basis, as it were.
The National Housing Fund Act requires that the Nigerian worker who earns an income of 3,000 naira and above per annum in both the private and public sector shall contribute 2.5% of his basic monthly salary to the fund. Every commercial or merchant bank shall invest in the fund 10% of its loans and advances as an interest rate. Every registered insurance company shall invest a minimum of 20% of its non-life funds and 40% of its life funds in real property development, of which not less than 50% shall be paid into the fund. And the federal government is saddled with the responsibility to make adequate financial contributions to the fund for the purpose of granting long-term loans and advances for housing developments.